Edward Roggie. What's your middle name? James.
James.
Because my dad's middle name is James. For those who don't know, this is my grandpa on my dad's side. And how old are you now, Grandpa?
85.
85 years young. And he says he has a short story. Yeah, right. The Legacy series, this is going to be part 2, kind of. We had my Grandpa Zare on already. And that was really great to get some perspective and some information from him. And a lot of what we want to do is just listen to your story and advice that you have, and you're a wealth of knowledge, even though you are too humble to admit it. But you've been through a lot of things, and we're excited to kind of tap into that because there's a lot of wisdom that we can use in our life. So Nick is here. What's up, Nick?
What's up?
What up? Grandpa, can you just start by introducing yourself, saying who you are and...
Well, I'm Ed Roggie. I'm Brock's grandfather. That's about it. About who I am.
That's the end of the episode. Yeah. We've been blessed enough to be close to you for a long time. We were raised pretty much in a house next door to you guys.
Well, from my perspective, I never knew my Grandpa Roggie or my Grandma Roggie. They had passed away before I was born, so I never got to know them. And in the setting that they were in, they were taught they shouldn't take pictures because it's a graven image.
Okay, yeah.
And so we didn't have a picture. I still don't have a picture of my Grandma Roggie. My Grandpa Roggie, we never had a picture of him either. And I had 3 aunts that lived in Lowville, and they worked at the hospital. 2 of them worked at the hospital. And I don't know how it came about, but a worker in the hospital was talking with one of my aunts and said, she said, I got a picture of your dad. And my aunt said, no, you don't. Nobody's got a picture of my dad. And she says, but I do. She said, no, you don't. You just think you do. So I'll bring it tomorrow. So the next day she brought it. And it was a picture of Grandpa Roggie in Steiner feed mill in Krogan. Somebody had tried to take a picture of him, and he darted around behind a pile of feed, and he's standing there with a grin on his face. He thought he beat him, but somehow they got a picture of him. He never knew it. And so my aunts took the picture and had, I don't know how many reproductions made of it, and each of the nephews and nieces, whoever wanted one, got a picture of him. Then, so that's the only picture I have of him. And the grandma, I don't know what she looked like. So...
What, did they both, you said they died before you were around?
They died before Dad was married.
Okay.
My grandma had they said a stomach ailment. I wouldn't be surprised it was cancer maybe. She the last, I think it was a year or 2, that she couldn't eat anything but raw eggs.
Okay.
And that's the only thing that
made her feel okay.
And but Dad said that the interesting thing was that her skin got just like a young girl's skin, just as smooth.
No kidding.
And then my grandpa Roggie, he passed away. I'm not sure just how long afterwards, but he had a sermon on Sunday, and he died before the next Sunday.
Okay. He's a pastor?
Yeah, he was a minister of the church at Krogan. So he went pretty quick. And I'm not sure just what he died from, pneumonia. They worked a lot in logging camps and like that, so it's pretty rough living, and he would walk on Monday morning, he would walk to the camp, stay there for the week, and he'd come home on a Saturday afternoon. And they took turns having sermons. So if it was his turn to have sermon, he'd work in the camp all week and then have a sermon on Sunday, and then to go back on Monday again. Yeah. So it was really, it was hard living for them because they had family they were raising and like that. So I never knew about my grandpa and grandma Yelzy on Mom's side. I knew them until your dad was born. I don't know how old your dad was when they passed away. They died within 2 months of each other.
Dad was born in 1960, right?
Yeah.
So
they died within a year or 2 after your dad was born,
64?
Yeah. So that we had them for our growing up years.
Did you? Okay, so we're talking when you're talking about the ailments of your grandmother. She would have been living. What year were you born?
I was born in 1939.
1939. So your dad would have probably been born 20 years before that or so.
Dad was 19, early in the 1900s.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so then the grandmother, we're talking like late 1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so certainly wouldn't know like cancer diagnosis or anything.
My great-grandfather would have come over from Europe.
Okay. Whereabouts? Do you know?
Can't even tell you his name now. I'll think of it later on. I do that.
Where did they come from?
Come from the Alsace-Lorraine area, Germany, Switzerland. There's the early Anabaptists, he was one of. They circulated in that area because there's persecution, and you get persecuted in one area, they move to others. Now, Grandpa Woodrick, his family was in Switzerland. So,
okay. So the Woodrick side is from Switzerland.
Yeah, well,
okay.
It was within the area they would float from one to the other.
Okay, yeah.
And
nice.
They came over because of persecution, pretty much.
And that was on a ship.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah, the persecution was that you wouldn't be able to get a job, things like that. So it was persecution plus economic reasons that they left Europe, and they settled up in the Belfort area.
Yeah, that's quite a trip.
Yeah.
How long? I wonder how long a trip this would have been like early 1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably somewhere early to mid.
And
let's see how long a ship would take.
Yeah, I should have. We got a book at home. I could have given you some of those dates, but I didn't.
No, Europe to America.
But yeah, so actually, our family, as you reach back, has been all that long that they've been in the United States. It is long in a sense, but yet not so long when you think that my great-grandfather came over,
Yeah. Yeah, your great-grandfather, so that would be my great-great-great. Is that right, Nick?
I think
so.
right? Yeah.
We're first-generation immigrants.
Yeah.
And did they come right into New York City then, right through Ellis Island?
Yeah, they come. There's stories about how they got up from when they got over to the United States, or to the new country, they called it. Some of them walked most of the way because they didn't have money to pay.
From New York City.
Yeah.
We are about a 6-hour car ride from New York City.
Yeah.
It's a long way to walk.
So this would have been like, so you said it was your great-grandfather. Mm-hmm. So that would have been like mid-1800s, do you think? Do you know?
Yeah, mid to three-quarters way through, there was this period of time where there was people coming over. So it's
a great emigration.
Yeah, it was a span of time. The story is told of Chris Nassiger, who was our minister here, bishop.
The Great Migration.
They claim that he was a stowaway on a ship to get over.
Kidding.
That's what the story is. I don't think he ever would say much about that, but
Okay, it was a stowaway.
Yeah.
So the trip back then would take anywhere from 40 to 90 days.
Oh yeah, it was, and
in a wooden boat.
A number of people never made it.
Yeah, I wonder what the survival rate was.
Hey, Brock.
The Great Migration.
Boats were metal in the
80s.
They weren't necessarily wooden boats. There's your fact check right back at you.
Yeah,
interesting thing.
They weren't pilgrims.
Interesting thing is that they came over on sailboats.
I'm thinking 1600s, apparently.
And now they're building ships with these big things on them to propel the ships. They're like a windmill-like kind of thing. Not really a windmill, but a spiral thing, I guess. So we're going backwards.
I don't know if they had metal boats back then. Actually, I'm sorry.
Yeah, actually, now it looks like they're. Now it looks like they're pretty much wooden boats. Then
it's before the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah,
So, what got them so far, like inland to Lewis County? Like, what brought them this far?
There was a guy that had acquired a big tract of land, and he wanted to settle it. So he made deals with people in Europe that he would bring them, get them across to the States, to the United States, or the New World, and get them a tract of land, and then they would pay it back, and that's how they got over.
With interest type of thing?
Pardon?
Like with interest, kind of?
I don't know how the setup was, but it was a deal where he'd get them over here, but then they'd have to reimburse him for that.
A businessman?
And they come over and it's just open land for us. That's all it was. They had to build their houses. And
Are you? Do you know how much detail do you know about how that whole process worked? Like, did they just pick a piece of land, or did this guy have like plot set up?
I think that he had he was a businessman, and I think that he had it set up so that but if you go up Belfort, like where my mom was born, those houses, they're all gone. There's a few sprinkled up through their farms, but back then you maybe had 2-3 cows, and that was about it, so you didn't do a lot of farmland, and the land up there was so that it's not good farmland. But they made a living on it, survived, and then a lot of them moved over across the river up in our area and like that because of the land and better place to farm. But they did. They struggled. They come over here, depending what time of year they come over. It'd be late in the fall. They had to get shelter before winter. And some of them, I heard of 2 guys that didn't have time to, so they got a bunch of brush and they tried to make pile it in and make a little place so they could get inside of it. Well, that didn't work, of course, but they had a...
This is a fact check for Nick back at him again. Okay, so could you imagine, this is a boat in the 1820s. Could you imagine coming across the ocean in that thing? I would be afraid to go across the ocean in a cruise liner, which is about 1,000 times bigger than that.
They must have bounced around a lot.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I can't get the exact survival rates, but it says some of the some of the crew members, when they would come across for I guess you would say trade to the U.S. or military ships, the survival rate, I think 13% could die.
Scurvy.
Could you imagine that? So how bad was it in Europe, or how bad was the persecution? And you think you take livelihoods away, it's not all just physical oppression. If you take livelihoods away and stuff like that, like you're,
We had a member from our church that went to Germany after World War II and built housing and like that. He was over there, I think, 3 years. But anyway, he went over on a ship. He's a big ship. And he said, I still got seasick because that thing rocked. He says, so if a big ship like that rocked like that, you can imagine what a little boat like this did.
Yeah. Do you know how old your great-grandfather was when they came over?
No, I don't.
Do you know if he had a family yet, or was it just him and his wife?
I think my great-grandfather would have been married in Europe. My grandfather...
Well, yeah, it would have been your grandfather. Was your grandfather born in America?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, as I understand, yeah. My dad's mother was a Nasher, I think. But the one thing that's hard when you study, there's some books out that people wrote about the Mennonites, the generations and all that. But the thing that's hard in it is that so many had same first name, and then some of them had the same last name. I had an uncle, John Roggie, and he married a girl that she had a twin, and that twin married a guy from Kurgan whose name was John Roggie. So whenever they got together, one would say my John, or the other would say my John, to define which.
Nothing has changed.
By the way, it's the exact same
to
now.
make sure they knew which John it was. You know?
Yeah.
So does that make it? You mean it makes it hard for like genealogy and stuff?
Yeah, because you go look down through, and it's so easy to get twisted up on trying to draw a line down through, and it's
It'd be like if everybody was named like John Doe or John Smith or something, and be like, why is there 10 John Smiths around here?
well, coming over there was Mosers, Roggies, Woodricks. There's kind of not a wide Verklers. There's Verklers, some Snyders, but there was some different names, but not a terribly large amount of different names because they're all kind of come from this kind of the same setting, and so if they named the first guy, one guy named him John, there probably was 2 or 3 others John with the same last name.
Yeah, you have to kind
around,
of figure
you know.
out who's who.
So it's I try to figure them out sometimes. We were in Indiana. So we were into voluntary service. We give a program in Indiana, and a guy come up to me afterwards, says to me, "Is your grandfather David Yowsey?" And I almost fell over because I didn't know this guy from Adam.
Yep.
And he went through he had it all figured out, and he lost me. I couldn't figure it out. And there's some people that are good at that, but I am not.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
Everybody's second cousin, twice removed. I'm like, you lost me after like.
Yeah. All I can know is like grandfather and great grandfather like that.
So okay, so you were saying that they kind of migrated up here, and it was just a lot of farmers, more or less. I was just started to make a living.
Farmers and loggers. They would take the bark of certain trees, peel the bark off, and they sold it to a place that did furs for processing the furs. And Dad said they would take those trees; they would be huge, virgin logs, cut them, take the bark off, and leave them lay. Couldn't use all the wood. He said they just would rot there. But they did. Like my grandpa Roggie, he worked in the woods a lot during the winter.
Yep.
And their cows, the cattle, if they got them through this winter alive, they didn't care a lot about getting a lot of milk because they just wanted to get them through the winter alive. It was pretty primitive.
Yeah.
That's
dangerous work.
Yeah,
in the woods too.
Yeah.
If you'll Google like the most dangerous jobs, that's always like in the top 3 if it's not number 1. Logging.
Yeah.
So dangerous.
They would take those. You see the log trucks going by now. These guys are coming up with a team of horses, a sled with logs piled quite high, and you're almost taking your life in your hands to do it. But they did it because they had to make a living.
Yeah, different time.
Yeah.
I can't imagine going somewhere, a completely new country that's, let's see, 1800s. I mean, most of the country wasn't even really explored too well.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of country and so.
Well, I know, and you've experienced it too when you're in school. When we went up to New Hampshire, I didn't know a single person up there. And for me, I don't acclimate very good, I guess, and it was a stretch to get my feet in the water, so to speak, and do what I was supposed to. But
yeah. So like the mid early 1800s. So Louisiana Purchase was in early 1800s. So that gives you an idea for how small or how uncharted USA was at that point. Mm-hmm. And to go through like Ellis Island or go through New York City and then just be like, we're going north. Mm-hmm. There must have been some struggle.
Yeah. They were pretty gritty.
Yeah. Well, the gold rush, like even all that was in the mid 1800s. So like when we think of the United States, like we just think of nice roads and you can go wherever you want.
Yeah.
And expansions and back then it was just a big leap of faith to kind of come up here and see if they can make it work.
Yeah, it's just I tell Grandma this sometimes, not to put the the kids down, and the children, like our great grandchildren, like that. Not to put them down, but they can't comprehend even what my life was like as a boy, young boy. Christmas, you got an orange and maybe a little bit of candy and one toy. And I remember one year I see in the catalog there's a Jeep and the headlights worked on it. Back then, your toys didn't have anything working on it. I mean, they were just
wooden
but this had headlights that worked, and I just got fascinated with that. And I told Mom, that's what I want. Well, she says, we have so much money for each child, and that's a little above what we spend, and wouldn't be fair to the others if we got you that. But I still hoped I'd get it. Didn't get it. Yeah. I mean, they stuck with their guns,
Yeah.
And I don't remember what I got, but some kind of toy. But that was one toy,
It stuck with you all these years.
We always got usually a shirt and a pair of pants, and then a good reading book, and some fruit, that type of thing, and a toy. And that was our Christmas.
You were born in 1939, you said.
Yeah.
Can you just keep going into depth on just your childhood, how you were raised?
Well, 6 of us boys in a row, so Dad had the farm. Dad had a heart attack when I was about 2.5 years old, and never was the same. He always run out of energy in the daytime. I always remember that. That's one thing that just was printed on my mind, seeing my dad lay there, my strong dad laying there helpless. And today, that heart attack would have been taken care of very quickly, but they didn't have the resources then. And he went a long time trying to get over it, and it was right during Depression. He had a hired man that was pretty rough on machinery, and something broke on a piece of machinery, and Dad got up, said, got to get it fixed. And Mom didn't want him to go to town, but he did go to town. And when he was downtown, he had another attack. So it was right back. And ever after that, he always had to take a nap in the daytime, maybe a 3/4 of an hour or so, to get through the day. But interesting, there was a Russian doctor that Mom got a hold of, and he's home pretty much all the time, it's just in bed. And he came and looked at him and he says to Mom, get a quart of whiskey and give him a spoonful, I don't know, 3-4 times a day, whatever. And Mom says that she did that, and she said from that point on he started getting better. That alcohol stimulated his heart, it made it go better. But he always had a skip in his heart. So it was
like a murmur.
Just skip every little.
Right,
every so many beats. But it was interesting. Heartbeat. Then when he got retired, he had many heart attacks, and after one of them, that skip quit. He had
like it corrected itself.
Yeah, it's weird, but
yeah, that is weird. I wonder about the alcohol. It probably has something to do with just thinning your blood. Yeah. Alcohol is a blood thinner.
Yeah.
Because they always say when you're bleeding out, like in the movies, in the Western movies, you'd see somebody that would get shot and they're bleeding out or whatever, and they like just douse a bunch of alcohol. It's like, might not be the best because you're thinning out your blood so you could actually bleed out.
A lot of times those murmurs are like your heart isn't pumping hard enough to get the blood out, so it sucks a little back in. And if your blood is, and that's the murmur, and if your blood is thinner, it's maybe easier to pump out. That is interesting.
Us kids, at least I did, I always lived in fear that something was going to happen to Dad. I knew he was taking medicine that thinned his blood or did things to him, and we were always afraid that was going to cause problems.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a lived in the fear that Dad might not be here, Oh, man, and I think that
it's wild.
Affected us.
Yeah. What ways? It's got to be hard to see that.
Recognized, as I tell Nick, that Well, he's asking if we ever hunted. I said, no. Dad loved fishing.
Okay.
But he had the farm, so he couldn't. But every year, after the first crop of hay was done, Mom would make us a bunch of lunch, and Dad would pick out a stream we had to walk back into, and we'd go back and go fishing for the day. And I don't know if we caught much for fish, but it's just the idea that Dad spent the day with us, you know. And I think with that, living in that fear that something could happen to him anytime, it made those days really
valuable,
pretty important, you know.
No kidding.
Yeah. And, yeah.
Pretty fond memories
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah. And otherwise, basically, our growing up years were working on the farm. 6 boys in a row, so Mom would always keep one of us in the house after the evening meal. They'd go out to do milking, and one of the younger ones would have to stay in and wash dishes.
Yeah,
and I can remember the day that I graduated from washing dishes to going out to the barn. I thought I really was somebody.
Did you have, so 6 boys. Yeah, you really wanted to go out and be with the boys.
Yeah, there was 6 of us, so there was...
Yeah. Then you had younger siblings.
I had 2 sisters younger, yeah. When I was growing up, my oldest brother was soon leaving, you know, because there's that much span between us.
Yeah.
And so we were 6 brothers, but a lot of the time not all at home.
Yeah, different time. Do you what was it like farming then versus now? Like, is there anything that stands out to you about the differences in farming? Because you were farming also.
Yeah,
so.
everything was done by hand. You know, Dad had a mowing machine, much like the Amish have, pretty much the same thing. First, when I was young, had a team of horses. We'd mow with that, and the only tractor he had was an old farmall with steel wheels.
Okay.
So the only thing he used that for basically was out in the fields, plowed, that type of thing. Then he bought a Farmall H. I don't know how old I was then, probably 8, 9 years old, 10 years old. And I thought that was the biggest tractor I'd ever seen. It's a toy now. But he used that, and then he got a mowing machine with a power-driven power takeoff. And he progressed, you know. Eventually they came out with a crimper that you hooked it on the mowing machine, and it had a power takeoff from the mowing machine.
Yeah.
And that made the crop, you could get your hay in a lot faster with it. Mm-hmm. So Dad was always, he was not adverse to new things, you know, like that. Yeah. But we baled the hay on the ground. Then he bought a rig that you put beside your wagon, hooked on the wagon, and you just straddle the bale, and that would pick the bale up and bring it up on your wagon, so you didn't have to pick it off the ground and throw it on the wagon.
Fancy. And
that's how I got run over by a truck. Andy and I, my younger brother Andy, because it had to go around so many times to get each row, he'd have Andy row this row and me this row into put 3 in 1, so it would be more efficient. Well, we would run ahead, roll a bunch in, and then we jump back, and I'd jump on the fender. That old truck had a fender that stuck out. Jump on the fender, ride. You know, that was a great thing. And one time when I did it, I slipped, and my foot went under, caught on the front wheel. And Brother Richard was driving, and he knew I was under there, but he said he knew if he stopped, it would put more weight on, because he said he felt the front of the truck go like that. Oh. And that run up my leg, and I see it coming up, and I twisted like this, and it run off my shoulder.
The whole car?
The front
whole
wheel.
Truck?
Yeah.
What?
I was sore for a long time.
So you got the front wheel went over you, and then you kind of rolled out, and then he stopped the truck.
Yeah, he stopped the truck so to do that.
Crawl out.
Well, yeah, because if you would have stopped with all the weight on
well,
you.
That's what he said. He said he didn't dare because he knew if he would do that, it would put more weight on.
I don't think I ever heard this story ever. You've been run over by a truck, Graham.
Yeah. As it was, I thought I was going to get squashed.
Right.
like that, you know. And yeah, I was sore for a long time. My leg, I hobbled around, never went to the doctor. Didn't do that. You know, Mom would doctor us up. Mm-hmm. You know, if our kids or grandkids got hurt anywhere near that,
yep, to the ER.
You know, but that's the way it was, you know, and yeah,
some duct tape on it.
Yeah, we
don't do that again.
Yeah,
you got in trouble for that.
Yeah, you probably got in trouble.
We got us 6 boys. You know, you can't help but get hurt.
Oh yeah.
We had a snowfall just a few inches, and we used to go up on that hill behind the barn. There's a lot of stone up in there like that. We took skipjacks. You know what a skipjack is? It's a
sure.
Yeah, and
let me see what a skipjack is.
And if you came down the hill without tipping over, you did something. Anyhow, Mom says you can't go sliding today. Well, we knew better. We went up there. Daniel and I went up. Daniel went down and he flew, and he hit a rock with his knee, gashed his knee right in the joint.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, he really laid it open. Couldn't bend his knee, couldn't do anything. So I had a sled there, dragged him home, got him home eventually. But yeah, you know, we did stuff like that.
All right, what is a skipjack?
You know what a skipjack is?
I Googled it and it brought up a fish.
Oh, Dad bought, or didn't buy, yeah, he bought an old building up in Denmark.
Okay.
And he tore it down for the lumber and through the late summer and fall, brought the lumber home, and there's an old wooden barrel, stave barrel there that he brought home with it. All of a sudden, that barrel come up missing. We couldn't figure out what happened to it. Well, what happened was Dad took it apart, and you put the ski part. It was rounding, so that, you know. And then he positioned a upright 2x4s, I think.
I found it. Yeah.
Up with a seat on it and a brace to brace it, and he built one for each of us boys. That was our Christmas present.
Out of a barrel.
Yeah. We had more fun with those things.
I bet.
But, yeah.
Let's see.
I think back in those days they did more. Yeah.
That looked kind of right,
Yeah,
Gramp?
yeah. It was
something like this.
it was that kind of idea.
So if, for anybody who's listening and not watching, basically it's just a seat with an angled up piece of wood.
Very simple.
Yeah, something like this.
And it sleds like a toboggan, like you go down it like it's like a sled.
Well, it had, see, like this ski here, that was the wooden stave, a barrel stave. And then
right. The
and he built upright. Well, pretty much like that one right here on the right.
Yeah.
With the brace in front
cool.
to keep it, you know,
sturdy. Yeah.
You just have to balance it like a bicycle. Or?
Yeah, you had to balance it.
Wow.
They were fun. They really were.
That's actually really challenging.
Yeah, they were fun.
But like fun.
Except for when you
do it.
slam your knee to pieces.
So we took on the old barn bridge. We'd carry water out there if it was not much snow. Get the snow off. You could carry water out there and ice it, and then we'd try to go down with the skipjacks. That didn't work very good. Had trouble usually.
Skipjacks
slip out from under you.
And so your dad built all 6 of you one of those? Or?
Yeah.
Out of one barrel.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome. I bet those are the kinds of things.
And that tool shed that Andy's got on the home farm.
Yep.
That's partly that part of his lumber from up there.
Oh, no kidding.
Wow.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
seems like a
they
lot of
worked
good
hard,
memories.
you know, and that Mom always said that she thinks the reason Dad had a heart attack so young was because it was right, the Depression came, and he had to do all the work himself. He couldn't hire any. And plus his stress. I think they said something like 3 or 4 years that they couldn't even pay the interest on the loan. But banks and financial institutions didn't want the farm back. What would they do with it? Nobody else could afford it.
Sure, yeah, just empty land at that
so,
point.
I mean, you were
it's better
kind of
than nothing.
safe for that reason. But, yeah, so there's a lot of stress. And she always figured that was what brought it on.
Wow.
But,
Yeah, that would be stressful.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, but we had good times. You know, we would get done at night in the summertime, and Dad would come out and bat the ball for us. You know, and we'd go out there and maybe make 2 teams, and didn't have only 3 on a team, but but and he would play with us like that, bat the ball around. Winter times we spent a lot of time in the house singing songs from the songbook. Dad was a good singer. He enjoyed singing, so that kind of occupied us in the summer and the winter time.
Yeah.
Didn't have snowmobiles then.
No, no, you just had skipjacks.
Yeah. But the one thing that impressed me as growing up, I think it had a real influence on my life, was the way my dad operated with business. An example is we had a calf buyer that used to come up from Utica to buy calves. And even after sales barn started, he would come up through, and Dad would sell calves to him because he liked him. He was just a young man trying to make a living. And one day he came, and Dad had, I think, 2 or 3 calves to get rid of. And he said, Sam, he says, got any calves today? Yeah. Dad says, what they do? Because they would go up and down in price each week. Gone down, Sam. Dropped. Okay, Dad, so he sold them to him. Well, they always in the paper would list the prices of the calves per pound. They went up, didn't go down. So the next week, this guy's name was Tony. He came in, come to the door. Got any calves this morning, Sam? Yeah, Dad says I do, but not for you. What do you mean? Well, Dad says when I do business with a man, I depend on being honest. You prove that you're not honest. You told me the direct opposite. You said they went down, it's gone up. He said, I can't do business with you. And he hung around a while, and Dad, I told him, he says, you might as well leave, you aren't going to get them. So he was gone. He's probably gone 4 or 5 weeks. And one day he come from the barn, we were milking early in the morning. Sam, can I talk to you? Yeah. Dad says, you come in. So he comes, he says, can we do business together again? Well, Dad says, are you going to be honest? And he said, you taught me a lesson. I am going to be honest. He said, I've learned my lesson. Dad says, we can do business. That impressed me, that Dad would, give him that second chance, and made no big deal out of it. He just did it, And that always impressed me, that he was willing to do that. And interesting, that man had a child that died a little while later. He came up and spent probably 2 hours or more with Dad in the barn, just talking with him. Somehow he saw strength in Dad, that he needed at that point, and that he came for that, So things like that always impressed me as a growing up.
It sounds like a great man.
Yeah, he was not a person that would cut circles. You know what I mean? He was just himself.
Honest.
But we had good racing. We worked hard. It was just part of life. That's the way you survived.
Just what you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sounds like a pretty great man.
We
talk about legacy.
Yeah, we knew if he told us to do something and we didn't do it, we knew there was a payday coming. Yeah. He would deal with it. I remember I was at school one day. I had a boy that always picked on me for some reason, because I was Mennonite, I guess. And one day I was coming down through, and he'd been picking on me for quite a while. And I come down through, and I had some books on my arms, and he stuck his foot out, and I went flying. And I don't know why I did, but I come off the floor, and I swung around and caught him right side the jaw, knocked him right backwards.
Nice.
And the minute I did it, I thought, oh no, what did I do that for? I lived in constant fear for about 2 weeks at least that Dad was going to find out about it.
Yeah.
As far as I know, he never did. And I'm sure if he would have,
he got away with it.
But
you're still waiting.
But that's where we could depend on Dad.
Yeah.
He was there, and he wasn't wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Now that you're older and have more perspective on that, what do you think his reaction would have been?
Oh, I'd had a talking to, and I probably would have had to go back and apologize to the guy and whoever else happened to be.
Yeah.
He'd have made me make amends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that would have been, do you think that inside he would have felt this is what I have to do, even though he knew you were defending yourself? Or was that something that he really wouldn't have condoned?
It happened, so I was the one that swung the fist.
Yeah.
So I was the one that had to make apologies. That would be his take on it.
Yeah.
And no matter if the guy did something to you, and that's part of the teaching that we grew up with. You're peaceful. You take a wrong before you do damage to someone else, and that's what our church teaches. And that's what Dad, that's where he lived, Yeah.
I think of when you're trying to, we have children. Nick has kids. I have kids. When you're trying to think of what it looks like to be a good father or a good man to lead your home, all the qualities you're talking about with your dad, I see in you, I see in my dad, generationally passed down. And I have a couple of keywords just from while you were talking about him, some things that I wrote down. Kind, firm but fair. Does that sound pretty familiar for your dad? Firm but fair. Hardworking, disciplined, honest, dependable, steadfast, and a peacemaker.
But, having said that, I look back at our children growing up, and there's some things that, with a discipline like that I look back at that I wish I had been treaded more lightly on and like that,
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a neighbor that used to come down, and we picked up stones in the morning, and in the afternoon we were done. So we wanted to go fishing.
So much fun. So fun.
We wanted to go fishing. So Dad says, you fish in our land. You can't go on beyond it. Well, fish didn't bite in our land, so we did go in the neighbor's land. Come up through, and Dad was standing in the door. Had a little stick in his hand or whatever he had. And the oldest boys, you didn't hit him hard, you disobeyed a couple of punches. Well, Andy and I, the younger brother, we were the last ones coming. We see what was happening. So we scooted around the corner of the barn. And Dad just said not a word till that evening. And he says to Andy, Dad, I see what you did to avoid getting punished. Don't think I didn't see it. But he didn't punish us.
Yeah,
but we got away with it. But yeah, it's just funny. But when you got 6 boys in a row, you're going to have things happen.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I think people confuse discipline with especially nowadays, discipline has a bad connotation for physical discipline. But really, the root word is discipling. We learned that from Tyson. Yeah. Discipling your children. And even in that case, he didn't give you maybe a consequence, but you were discipled a little bit right there. So you know, I'm watching.
We weren't spanked, but we suffered. Anxiety, But yeah. But it, we were all there in the house, that's our life. So things like that happen, but
that's a really great perspective. All of you there together, that was life. And your dad seemed to have the patience to deal with that.
Yeah.
Not an angry man, but a patient man who did what he had to do to raise his kids right.
Yeah. And the other thing that as I was growing up, I learned that I watched my dad, that your wife was pretty important for you. You respected her. You treated her right, And time and time again, I would come in the house, and he'd be in there talking with his arm around her, One time I remember they were right after a meal. Mom was sitting on a chair, and Dad was over here, and they got picking on each other. They had joshed back and forth. And Dad would say something that she back at him, and he says after a while, I don't know what she said, something. Well, he says, you can't say that to me. And he just looked like that. It just the chair collapsed. Well, her dad was off that chair down on the floor. Take care of that. But he always, respected. And the discipline, if if we thought we could get away with going to mom, that didn't work. Because if it's something that we maybe wanted to do that she didn't want us to, she'd say, "You wait to talk to your dad." You know, so it was a combination.
Yeah.
You didn't work one against the other. You know, and
They're a team.
Yeah, and the kids will learn that in a hurry. You know that. You know.
Yeah, what you can get away with. Yeah, for sure.
And that didn't work with us. It just didn't. But
so growing up on the farm, I mean, I could listen to these stories forever, and I think we're gonna have to get you to write a book or something about your growing up days. Moving a little bit on further, is it true that you were quite the hockey player?
Oh, we played at it.
That's not what I've heard. I've heard that you are very good.
We up to Levi Schrag did something for the young people. He lived in Denver. He had a pond out back, and he had put a shed out there. Had a stove in it
On the ice,
on the side of the ice, and he got a pump that he could spray it, and beautiful ice. So we would go up there, and we couldn't play hockey until a lot of neighbor kids. I mean, that pond would be full. About 9 o'clock, they had to go home. 9:30. So then we could play hockey. And Levi loved playing hockey too. He was an older man, but he'd be there. And so we'd play probably midnight before we get done playing hockey. And then Levi'd say, "Boys," he has little shovels, scrapers, about so wide. "Scrape her down, boys. I'll flood it tonight. I'll flood it in the morning. You'll have ice for tomorrow night." And so we would do that. At midnight, we'd be out there scraping the pond. Well, Dad told us, he says, "You can skate all night, but when I call you in the morning," we were working on the farm, Daniel and I, he said, "when I call you in the morning, you're come down." So, boy, we did. We wanted to make sure that so we could. And we had a team from Kroger, and then we had a bunch from the Lowell area, Carthage. We played just for the fun of it, you know. Didn't have any protection. Nothing. I don't know why we didn't kill each other.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be tough for a lot of parents to let go of this these days.
Yeah, and we played Carthage, and they weren't really very good. I didn't think we would beat them.
That's right.
This bunch come in, and I looked at these guys, and it looks like a lot of different guys from Carthage. Figure that out. We got out on the ice. Find out they were guys from Canada, cousins and stuff from Canada. Man, I'm telling you, they had us flying through the air all over the place.
Yeah.
Oh, man, they were good.
They were cheaters from Carthage.
Yeah, the Canadians, they know how to play hockey, that's for sure.
One night after we got done playing, we said, let's see who can get the next goal. So you tend goal. I never tended goal.
No, with any pads or anything?
No, we had nothing.
Oh, my word.
And so I was up there with my just a stick, and Elton Lehman come up through, and he took a swing, and I mean, that puck coming, and I guess it hit my stick. It hit me straight side of the head, knocked me right out.
Jeez.
How old were you?
Oh, I wasn't married yet then. Yeah, I was married. I was married right after, so I'd have been probably 22 or so.
Okay, so you played hockey for a long time then.
And it knocked me right. I never, it felt like someone brushed my head, you know, just.
Yeah, something brushed your head.
And I felt, and of course, Elton Lehman, you know, they come up, and I got up, started getting up, and I passed out again. Well, then Elton was scared.
Yeah,
but it came to after a while. I got home.
It's known as CTE.
Next morning, probably 6:30 or so, phone rang. Elton Lehman, "How's Ed doing?"
Oh, yeah, he was concerned.
Pretty good. "Oh, I didn't sleep last night."
Oh, no.
He was really pretty worried about it. Yeah. But, yeah, we did. Like I say, I don't know why we didn't kill each other. But
anybody ever get seriously hurt besides?
No, not really.
Wow.
Banged up, you know, bruised up. But,
it's crazy.
For the amount, we played a lot of hockey, and for that amount of hockey playing, we were pretty fortunate.
Right. So you loved hockey. Was that kind of that was kind of your interest, your thing?
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I liked it. I was never good at basketball, and softball and baseball was not, you know. But hockey, we just really had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. And so was that the same when you were, as you got older, was that the same place that you played at?
Yeah, we always played up there, yeah. Well, now they got a place in Lowville that is got a roof over it, the pavilion there.
You go there and teach the young guys a thing or two every once in a while?
You were an enforcer, weren't you?
A bunch of us went down to Boonville to roller skate one time.
Okay.
I thought, I never roller skated. There'd be nothing to it. I can ice skate. It's different.
Yeah, it's totally different.
I got out there and I was on my butt before I knew it.
Yeah, they're definitely different.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so you mentioned kind of your example of your father with your mother and how that shaped, I guess, your future relationships and how you treated women, and especially Grandma Elizabeth. Can you tell us when you met her?
My wife?
Yeah.
Met at school. I was a senior, and she was sophomore, I guess.
Okay.
And she was the oldest in the family. She worked out a lot, so she was pretty restricted. But we dated a long time, too long, really. But she's the type of person that can accommodate. For me, when I met her, I wasn't living that good of a Christian life. Just not until after we were married, a number of years, that I came to where I felt the support for commitment, and then just got a sense of call for ministry that I thought God wanted me in ministry. She never bargained for that, which when we met, and but she was really. She did her part as a pastor's wife. She really is, and we had a couple that moved in from Pennsylvania that he had a problem with. The husband's role was, the wife's role was submission. That's what he said, but he didn't really practice that. But anyway, Grandma would come up with different ideas, nice little things. We had a small church, and different things that we'd do, like on Mother's Day, we'd get flowers and different things, that we did for the church. I was talking with this man one day, and I said, some of those nice things that we've enjoyed in the church that we did. I said, who thought of that? He started grinning. Yeah, I said, I know. So he took, but Betty, she was a good example of a person who related. She never liked the attention that a pastor wife just gets, but she coped with it, But I think when I retired was just a release for her to think that now she didn't change any. She's people the same and everything anyhow, but she's got a good heart, of caring for people. And
did you guys went to school all the way up through? Like, when did you meet for the first time?
What's that?
Were you children when you met, or did you just meet in high school?
Later on, we started dating,
So you have like at what point were you kind of like, oh, I'm interested?
Well, I tell her this. I said the first time I was with her on a date, I just knew that she was the person I wanted to marry.
First date.
Just there was something about her demeanor and her, just the way she related and like that it clicked. It worked, and that's been that way all the way up through. But she does. She has a real heart. She just loves her children and grandchildren, great grandchildren. She fuss with them. And that to her, when we didn't know what to do about the place to live, came up with what we did. I said to her afterwards, I said, living so close to kids like that, does that bother you? Oh, she'll love it, she says. And so it's been right in line with what she she is, you know. Little ones come over, she'll read with them and like that, you know. But you know, I think one thing that happened in our marriage that really, in a sense, changed me and her was when your dad was born, and then the next when Stanley was born. Both times I thought I was going to lose Betty, and you can't go through that without having it change you. You know, when you realize that not just once but twice I had a second chance to live with this lady, and it was tough going through that experience, but you know, it taught me a lesson. Lesson that you never take for granted the other person. I still remember going to Watertown in the ambulance. I rode in the ambulance with her, and all I could think of was keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open, keep your eyes open. And when we went through Copenhagen, she kind of says we aren't going to be able to keep the baby. Somehow she knew it. And when we got down there, then that's the first thing they told me, that the baby's not going to survive, but we're going to try to save the mother. And I sat there for a few hours, you know, and your mind really churns. You think a lot of things. And I think that changed what our relationship would have been without that. It just put it on a whole different level. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's... So then when pregnant for Kathy, we worried all the way through it. Well, we went down to a specialist, which was a good move for us. And she was born without any of that. So
you're talking, so Dad was the oldest and had complications. Yeah. And then you guys were pregnant with Uncle Stanley, mm-hmm. and there was even more complications. Yeah. And both times, Grandma's life was kind of at risk. Yeah. And was Stanley born, or
he was still born? Okay. They told me that was going. He's not going to survive the birth. Mm-hmm. And
that's tough. It's hard to go through.
Yeah, it's. You know, it's just something that happened, and I think both Grandma and I both learned from it. You know, trust and so on. But it was tough. I remember one Saturday afterwards, I worked till noon, and it was just the baby. We never got to know the baby, but there was something that really hit home with it. And I was coming out at noon, and I was out of it, and so was Grandma. And I said to her, let's go to Niagara Falls. Just take off. And we did. Just felt we had to get away somehow, you know. Took Dad and Mom with us. I went over to Dad and Mom, said, you want to go to Niagara Falls? It was funny. We were driving along quite a while, and Dad says, boy, I didn't know it was this long to get to Thousand Islands. I said, we're not going to Thousand Islands, we're going to Niagara Falls. We are.
So that's why they said yes. We'll go to Thousand Islands, no problem.
He enjoyed it. It was a short, I had to be working Monday morning, you know, but there was that kind of tension in us. Some people think, you know, well, if you didn't ever get to know the baby, so it's not as bad. Somehow it's almost worse.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just different. Yeah. But, And that's why, you know, when Kathy lost her two boys, for Grandma and I, that was...
kind of opened up a lot of wounds.
It was just devastating.
Yeah.
To see her go through it, her and John go through it, and knowing what we went through. And, well, when Derek died, the pastor's wife, the church says they say God doesn't make mistakes, but this seems like one in our mind. You know.
And Derek would have been your first? No. What if you'd been in the line of
Darren
grandchildren?
died. Kathy's Darren died. Then
Was it after Tyson and Tyler had already been born? Or would have... Yeah, it's probably...
Yeah.
So it would have been in between.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was interesting. I was taking a tractor over to my brother Andy's, Tyson, and anyhow, there was a rainbow. And Tyson says to me, "Is that where Derek and Darren are?" I said, "Yeah." They're lucky. He says his concept of what death was that they're fortunate to be with the Lord.
Been little then, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to go through stuff like that, and Aunt Kathy's been through the thick of it. Can you speak a little bit to what it takes to be married as long as you have? How long have you been married? We put him on the spot.
1960.
1960. Okay, so
that's good. It's quick.
It was good.
Impressive.
So that is 64 years. 64 years?
All that.
If a young couple came
in
to
case
you,
Grandma listens to this, you say, "Yep, that's right."
yes, you'll be fact checked by Grandma if she listens to it. If there was a young couple that came to you and said, "Can you give me a couple pointers on what it takes to stay together with your spouse?" What is it?
Well, one thing that I've tried to really practice it, and that is that if something goes wrong during the day, you don't go to bed at night without clearing it up, telling each other you love each other, because if you let it go on, it can easily turn into bitterness, and so I try to make sure that, and even sometimes I think, hey, I'm the one that should be getting an apology, and if it don't come, I need to be willing to say, look, whatever happened, and I'm sorry it happened. Let's move on from here, and drop it, And probably one of the worst things, and I've heard this happen in couples, is that one partner or the other will drag up something that happened 3-4 months ago. You did this and you did that, throw it in their face. And that's the quickest way I know to make trouble. Married couples that are deeply in love can become the worst enemies very quickly. I mean, it can happen so fast. Love turned cold somehow or other does that. And but yeah, and I think working together for goals, if when the children come, be unified. How do we raise this child? What do we say are off limits? What is just so we're in sync with that. I've heard already where one will stick up for the child when the other one's, and that's going to tear the couple apart. And so it's just to keep a very short list of things that, that went wrong, just get them off the board. I think is the best way to keep fresh. We make a point of it every night. We have a prayer together and stare together, and then tell each other we love each other. You never know whether one or the other will be here next morning, So you take advantage, make sure that relationship is. I think that the worst thing I can think of is I've heard cases of where there's been a squabble, and one or the other left angry, and got an accident, got killed. That's hard to live with, and I don't want to have to live with that. And I know Grandma doesn't too. So there's real benefits of keeping that, keeping it close, where you can say I'm sorry, And it's interesting because in the years of pastoring, where I got in situations where there's been some in people between people, if you can't get them to come to the place where they can say I'm sorry, it never gets solved. And that's what we're saying in marriage. If we can't say I'm sorry, it just wrangles on and on. So that, and the other thing is finances. I think finances can be responsible for a lot of breakups. Become united on that. We always had our money all together, and I know some couples don't, and they have the reasons, But I think that can be an area of conflict. Especially, we had a couple in our church. They're divorced now. She was good. She had a good job. She was good with money. He had a good job, but he was terrible with money. Mm-hmm. So two different accounts. Well, who pays this bill? Who pays that bill? Yeah. And there was continual jangling. He spends all the money, and then I have to pay. And we tried to work with it, but we never really could work on it. And I think that's so important to the financial, not only how you make money, but how you spend it. It's important that. And I know one thing I did ask Grandma about. I knew she wanted a nice camper, and I see where I could buy one, and I never said anything to her. She come home one day, and the camper was sitting in the driveway, and I thought, I wanted to surprise her, but that's probably not the best idea.
You can surprise her with flowers. Yeah, right. Maybe not a camper.
Yeah,
but that does happen sometimes where you want to go big or go home kind of. Yeah, it is fun to surprise your spouse like that. And
yeah. So those are some really good points. There's some good life lessons for people who want some help in their marriage. Quick to apologize, communication, common goals, unite on finances, keep perspective that this is the person you love and that little arguments aren't actually that big a deal, and then pray together. So in 1997, Gallup poll did a national review study and found that 1 out of every 1,152 couples who prayed together got divorced.
Yeah.
So it's way less than 1% when you pray together. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, so it says, show the divorce rate among couples who pray together regularly is 1 out of 1,152, which comes out to about 0.00086%. Seems like there's a cheat code in there. Pray together. It's important.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever had anything in your life that was, aside from losing Stanley and from losing Derek and Darren and Uncle John, have there ever been stuff in your relationship that was hard to deal with?
Between us?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
That's pretty good.
We try to do things together, and be together a lot. And I think that helps to unite. Yeah. I've told Grandma already, I feel very fortunate to have had her for my companion.
Yeah.
Interesting, she's not one that'll stick. I had a tractor accident, and it cost us a lot of money from the farm. She never liked the farm. She could have hassled me on it. She never did. She just took it in stride. So it happened. Go on from here,
Yeah.
And, it's been life.
Was that just her conscious decision to just decide that she was just going to support her husband and what he was doing?
Well, I think her example of her mother, as her mother, she was, to me, she was one of the best mother-in-laws you could ever have. She just respectful and caring, and make parents really influence children.
Yeah.
Do
just some general advice for the generation that's coming up. I mean, you have so much wisdom to share with us, kind of along the lines of, for young men and for young women, what to expect from life and what's going to make life better for you, and how that even relates to your faith.
Well, I think what's happening in so many people's lives is that the spiritual aspect of the life is being put on the side pretty much, and everything else is going above it. We grew up with the whole issue of faith, commitment, being pretty central. Mm-hmm. It reflects on what you do, and how you order your life. For me, once I became serious about my faith and realized that God had a purpose for me, then it made a reason for living, and I made decisions. I had to make decisions in line with that, and yeah, sometimes things happen. We wanted to stay in New Hampshire. We were working with a little church there, and all that. But my employment, I couldn't get enough employment to really. So I think God sometimes brings things to nudge us to where He wants us.
Yeah,
and then come back and. Grandma wanted me to go to the hospital and get a job because I liked orderly, I liked hospital work, but I knew that would be pretty confining, and I wanted to be more involved with ministries and trying to be helpful to other people, and I didn't think the hospital thing would do that. Co-op did for many years till toward the end. It got difficult, but. I think somebody says prosperity does more damage than hardships, and I think that could be quite true. We like prosperity. Nobody likes to be poor, but I think prosperity can lead us into devoting ourselves to a lot of things that aren't very important,
Hard things are character builders. Hard things are perspective builders. Yeah. Hard things build calluses for people to be stronger for future things. When you're comfortable and you're complacent and you become distracted easy, very hard to get distracted about what really matters. Yeah. When you're focusing on keeping what really matters alive. Yeah. And I think that that is something that you're exactly right. Our culture is totally lacking on. The whole, do hard things message is starting to get out there more often. But you need stronger people. You don't need, better circumstances.
I think we've developed pretty much me first attitude, and that's why I appreciate it, like what you did with neighbor, talking about concern about him. Tyson goes out and plows the driveway for older people, can't do it themselves. And when I see my children and grandchildren and the great-grandchildren doing those kinds of things, to me, that's very satisfying. It makes me feel good that because that's kind of foreign to the mentality of society. Mm. It's I don't know. It just seems like we make it hard as a society. We make it hard on each other by being so me-centered, and
versus. God-centered, then family-centered, then community-centered. Yeah. When everything comes from the outside in, it's definitely different.
And then, that can happen to us without us realizing it, where we become so
comfortable
where we are and not able to see the needs out there, and I say I think we should be doing those things for other people without looking for acclimate. What the Bible says, your right hand shouldn't know what your left hand's doing. In other words, you care about other people because you care about them, not to get big acclamation of how great you are and that type of thing. And I think that can happen. I said already, like with pastors, this whole thing of pride, being sort of myself, I'm the center of attention, can become very crippling.
Sure.
And sometimes I try to evaluate myself over the years I think we have to guard against it. And one of the things I used to, before church service during the Sunday school, I'd always just go and be by myself and pray that I take myself out of the picture and that people see something besides me. When you do that, I think it helps to put us in a place where we don't realize that where we are supposed to be if we don't do that. And I think it helps us to remember that we're just simply an instrument, And that's why I like to see the children, grandchildren, you guys do things for people, other people. You didn't have to go after that deer last night, but you did out in the cold. You helped your buddy out.
It was pretty cold.
Yeah, it's
I'm a great person.
It's that kind of it's that kind of thing I like to see. And as the younger generations come up, that has to happen in each one's lives. Each generation's lives has to develop that kind of an attitude, that kind of lifestyle, I guess. And
I would say that we've seen that born out in my father and his father, which is you, and your father, as you were talking about him. It's a generational passing down of these high value qualities that you would want to see in your grandkids and your kids. Yeah. That's because of the generational, I call that the generational wealth that really matters. Well, all of the stuff that we had mentioned before is because you guys are doing that. That's the legacy. That's the whole point.
It works both ways. The Bible says that, talking about the Jewish lineage, the sins of the fathers are visited on the children, the children's children. Right. That type of thing.
It is. Yeah, it's that kind of attitude is the glue that will keep everything together generation after generation. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that mentality goes away, everyone's kind of on their own and things break down and it doesn't work as well. And it's the glue that binds the family and everything together.
It's always been interesting. I worked in a store. I worked with customers. It was always interesting to me when they had a husband and a wife that had to make a decision about, we used to have some building materials and things like that, It's always interesting to see how they relate to each other. Mm-hmm. And I had one day a couple come got something, and he said, I forgot my billfold. So she reached in the pocketbook, she gives him money. So I made the change, and dummy me, I give the money back to him. Just for kicks,
Yep.
And she looked, wait a minute, she says, that's my money. She says, what's your money? In his pocket. And they got in a knockdown argument, and I sat on the other side of the desk, kept shrinking down, tried to get out of sight. They left their man. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting to see how he obviously was wrong. Yep. He should have given the money back to her if they keep separate money. But it was interesting, the dynamics that took place there,
Everything's kind of a push and a pull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know people who do that as well, who kind of keep their finances separate, and you wonder what else they're keeping separate.
Yeah.
I really think that in all areas of your life, you're one with your spouse, with your partner. And, and if you're not, then it shows, and I can tell when Stephanie and I are on sync, like where we're not in sync, like I can tell. And it's very easy to see that pulling apart And if you're not like conscious of it and able to bring it back, like you had said before, like, hey, something's not right between us. Like we need to figure it out because we love each other. And like, this really isn't that big of a deal when you look into the grand scheme of things.
We had a neighbor that he was a barber and she was a beautician. Both had separate jobs and they had separate money. And they were getting arguments and squabbles. And he says it was gotten really bad. And he said, one day he said to her after they had a big knockdown fight, he says, we don't want to do this. Why are we doing it? So they sat down and they took the different arguments they'd had that they remember what happened. So every one of them went back to who pays this, who pays that, to split. He says to her, you know what? He says, we've got to pay it. It's got to come from you and I. Why don't we just put it together and pay it? So he said they did that. He said our marriage just smooths right out. Just one less area to cause problems, you know. And they were smart to be able to eliminate that area and make it work out. But, yeah, it's interesting.
I want to. We won't hold you. We'll get you ready to get out of here. In 100 years from now, I'm going to be gone. Nick will be gone. Stephanie will be gone. You'll be gone. Dad will be gone. What would you like to say to the future generations in your lineage? Because there's a good chance that this message will be able to reach them in 100 years. So what is something that you'd want them to know, your great grandkids?
One of the things that I've desired is that our family all receive eternal life with God in heaven. That's anything else that goes on is minute compared to if you lose your eternal destiny of God. So my prayer has always been, we pray for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, that they will respond to the Lord in their lives, and that'll bring them into a life that translates into eternity with God. Otherwise, life is pretty useless. The Bible says, well, if you gain the whole world and lose your own soul, what will it gain you? And that's what I say. I want to see our children, grandchildren, right down through. And that's why I think it's so important that as for you guys, to teach your children the godly principles. They'll teach their children godly principles, quite likely, pretty likely. And so that's so important that each generation is faithful to the next one. I can't go to the great-grandchildren or the great-great-grandchildren. That's going to be up to their parents, you know. It work if each generation is faithful to the next one, you know. And that's my greatest thing, is that none of our family has to spend eternity apart from God, from Christ. To me, that would be disastrous. So that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah. No, I think that's right on. From a grandson's perspective to a grandfather, you are such a good example for me, and I know for Nick too. Just what a godly man looks like, what a godly father looks like, what a godly husband looks like. And that is the kind of legacy that I want to continue. And I think that the more that you see that through the generations, even the way you talked about your dad and the way that I know my dad talks about you, and the way that I am going to talk to my kids about my dad, just lays the groundwork for good examples, and then you can do with what you will.
He even having said that, I need to do what I worked with a guy, and he said every night before I go to bed, he says I think about through the day what transpired, and he says the things that aren't what I want, he said I ask God to forgive me for, and I ask Him to give me strength to do better tomorrow. I have to do that each day too, you know, and we what we think, but sometimes human beings are not perfect, and I'm far from it. And so I have to do that kind of evaluation and then be willing to make the changes, But, yeah.
Yeah, because it's one thing to notice there's a problem, and it's another thing to actually take action against that problem and get better.
Yeah. So anyhow, you have a grandfather that's not perfect. I want you to know that.
Yeah, he could have fooled me.
Many times far from it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can wrap up now. Nick, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I think there's a lot more of your story that is yet to be shared. So maybe someday, if you're willing to come back on, we could pick up where we left off here and talk more about how you made 25 cents an hour at the co-op.
Yeah.
If you're willing to come back on, I think we'd love to hear more of your stories. So thanks for coming on.